So before starting with this meetup, I just want to read out one safe harbor statement, which is very much important. So including me and the speaker, we are organizing this meetup based on our individual capacity. We are not representing our employers or our companies here. Now, second thing is this presentation is meant for learning purpose only. We don't hold any responsibility if the same solution does not work for your business requirements. You have to understand, analyze your business requirements. Please take this presentation as learning purpose only. And we are not going to promote anything apart from whatever Teerth is going to share here. We are not going to promote any other tools. We're not going to promote any other thing apart from MuleSoft connectors and everything. So this presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. It is strictly meant for learning. So I would love, I would love Teerth gonna share, gonna present, his introduction. But just want to say one thing. Thank you so much for taking out your time, Teerth. I know you are very busy, and thank you so much for, blessing New York City with your presence. It's wonderful job that you're doing for whole MuleSoft community as well as New York City. Like we are highly obliged. Thank you so much for doing it today. Over to you, Teerth.
Yeah, thanks, Neeraj. Thanks. Okay, so about me, like I'm working as a lead software engineer at Persistent Systems, and I have been working in the insurance domain basically. So I work in the cloud and the integrations front. I'm proficient in both front end and back end technologies. So I was the second runner up at the MuleSoft Hackathon 2020. I work on multiple technologies, and as I mentioned here, Java, .NET, Android, Angular, and of course MuleSoft. From certification perspective, I think I go hand in hand with what Neeraj said. So I am a MuleSoft certified developer, and I also have my integration architect certification. And I'm planning for the platform architect with Izul. So let's see how does that come out. And I run a blog, so this bitmasters.in, and I post a lot of technical stuff out there. So you can follow it. I'm also proud to say that one of my recent blog got selected for the top Q1 Community Contribution Award from Ubisoft. So it was on the REST API best practices. So you can definitely check that and see if that comes handy. Okay, regarding the agenda for today, we'll be checking what is AWS very briefly because we will be more concentrated on the MuleSoft front. Uh, we'll then see what AWS lets you do, some services that AWS offers. Then our deep dive will be on the S3 and connector, the use cases, followed by a demo and then trivia questions and of course Q&A. Okay, AWS. So I think it is a boon to cloud computing right now. So there are a lot of cloud providers right now, like GCP and AWS and uh, even Alibaba Group. I think that's also becoming something. But then AWS is really popular in the cloud. A lot of people have got some hands on to it, and a lot of companies are using it. So what is AWS? It's world's first comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. So it has around, I think, more than 200 fully featured services. It gives you a lot of features, right? It is an infrastructure as a service, IaaS. It's a platform as a service, and it's a software as a service. So each of these offerings from AWS makes it really popular, and a lot of people are using it in their companies to get profit out of it. So what does AWS let you do? So it can let you do a lot of things, right? So it can let you run an application, application servers, web applications, post dynamic websites, securely store files anywhere, on the AWS cloud. You also get fully managed MySQL, Postgres, or Oracle servers. I think one of the most exciting thing about AWS that I have been using lately is the serverless Aurora. So it's a fully managed, serverless compute based database feature. So it can scale to any extent. You can send emails, the ACS, and then there's lot, right? 200 plus fully featured or fully managed services. It's difficult to cover all in one go, but then you get a gist, right? So it has a lot of features available. So what are some services? So I have covered few services and I have grouped them together into compute, storage, and the databases and artificial intelligence, but there are more. So just one FYI. So in the compute, you have EC2, which is something where you host the the virtual machines. So it gives you a lot of control. So you can run anything and everything out there. You can also put a mule runtime standalone, and then you can use that as a server cluster. So you have Lambdas, where it's a serverless technology that allows you to run functions in the cloud. From the storage perspective, you have S3, which we'll be covering today. You have Glacier. Glacier is kind of, it goes handy with S3. So files which are not that accessed, you can save it in Glacier and save some money out of it. Then you have databases, DynamoDB, which is one of the high performant NoSQL database. Then you have RDS, of course, RDS as I talked about it. And from the artificial intelligence point of view, you have Lex, SageMaker, Poly. So these are all the services that, but the list goes on and on, as I've mentioned. So there are more unlimited number of services which can come handy in any of the projects that you deal in. So let's focus on the S3 that we'll be talking about today. So what is AWS S3? So it's a storage service which is offered by AWS. So it has industry leading scalability, availability, and security and performance. So the benefits are that of course, the performance, scalability, and all these things. But then you also have a wide range of cost-effective storage classes. So based on your requirement, you can select what type of storage class do you need, and you can get benefits out of it. So it has unmatched security, compliance, and audit capabilities. So you can easily manage data and access control. So you can access them. I'll come to it in part of the demo as well. You can make some pre-signed URL and stuff like that where you can give access to some of your resources for a given period of time. And then you have query in place and process on request where you can, so the cloud itself, right? You can go to the console and you can see all the data query out there and all these things. A lot of features available. And I think I think it has availability of 11 nines, like 99.9999. So it's really highly available. So I mean, this can be used in a lot of use cases. So one I can think of is like where you can save your data coming in from the API to the S3 and then trigger some processes on S3 and then push it to the database. So something like that I'll be showing in the demo. But my point is that it's highly available, so it definitely comes handy. Now talking about the S3 connector. So the latest connector that is available for S3 is 5.7.x. From the compatibility point of view, it is Mule 4.1.1 or higher. So you need to have your runtime version 4.1.1 or higher to use this particular connector. So which is the latest one. I think 5.6 also has pretty similar 4.1.1, and then the level is select. Now, as I was telling, somebody was speaking about the Java integrations in front like that. So what MuleSoft does is, it kind of creates a wrapper for you. So down the line, it still uses the SDK for Java to do all the intervention with S3, but then you get a pretty decent connector out of it, and you get good UI, and then you can use it, and where the that's the USP of MuleSoft, I guess. It makes things easy for you, so you don't have to search for code and then uh, get these things done. So that's what MuleSoft does for us. So just the connector about Amazon S3. Now there are a lot of operations. I mean, covering all the operations in one meetup or maybe even multiple meetups is not possible. But then, I have just mentioned few, and I'll be demoing few of them maybe. So few of them out here are like listing of the buckets. So you can list all the buckets that are present in your account. You can create buckets. You can delete buckets. So in the delete, I have mentioned one very important point that you can also. So basically, if you go to the console and if you try deleting anything, you need to type something like permanently delete or something like that. Uh, Not sure if anybody has seen that, but then you need to do that one extra check out there. Now, if you have files out there, then it doesn't allow you to delete by default. So you need to delete all the files inside the bucket, and then you need to delete. But then MuleSoft has this capability where you can give a flag and you can force delete the bucket if any need be. I mean, I'm not saying that every use case needs that, but then if there is a need, you can definitely do that. And then you can create objects. So you can create objects, files, anything. and then you can of course delete it, copy objects. So let's say you have two accounts, of AWS. You can copy objects from one account to the other, and a lot of use cases in that, right? So you can also,
Sorry
yes.
to interrupt you, Deep. A
Yep.
few questions actually.
Hmm?
So Ankush is asking, is bucket like schema? Or Srinivas is asking, basically bucket is a repository.
Yeah, so bucket can schema is definitely from the DB point of view, right? So bucket can be told as a repository that is mentioned. So it's like a place where you can add files, right? So you can create different buckets and then you can add files into it. So I won't consider that as a schema because I mean, you can take the analogy from DB point of view, but then, yeah, I mean, it's still a bucket which is close to a repository, maybe, where you can put files, different files, and you can create different buckets, of course.
Thanks for that.
Okay. Any other questions, Neeraj?
No other questions. We can keep going. Thank you so much, Steve.
Sure. Okay. Now you can also list objects. So let's say that you have objects in a bucket. You can list all the files in the object. Uh, I mean, I'll show it in the demo, but then you get the timestamp, the owner, and then you can also see the name of the file and some stuff like that. You can delete the objects from the bucket. Then you can get the object, like you can fetch what the object is out there. You can get the metadata of the objects. A lot of features. I mean, delete bucket website configuration. This one, is like website configuration is where it comes in. Like you can host static websites in S3 actually. So you can create a HTML page. You can put some JS. You can put some CSS out there. Put it in the bucket and then make it public and then create it as a website. So that's a pretty decent feature that you have in S3. So I mean, you can create website configuration and you can delete as well. I've just mentioned one just for bringing this topic that you have this capability. I mean, not sure if it will come handy in any of the integration, but who knows? I mean, you can always use any of these features that are available. The most interesting one that I feel is that this particular one, which is creating a pre-signed URI. So what it does is that it creates a very it creates a link for you basically for your object, and it can be shared with users. I mean any user basically, and then you don't even need any AWS security credentials. So usually you need AWS IAM security credentials to access those files if it is private. But then for this particular one, you can create a pre-signed URI, give it some time limit, like maybe it will be active for 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, whatever. For that period of time, that URL will be accessible. So you can create that pre-signed URI and you can share it across. This might come handy in many integrations, like for example, where you are creating files in your S3 bucket, and then you need to share those files with some other clients or maybe some other providers, whatever the case is. So in those cases, I think this particular one really comes handy, the pre-signed URI. Okay. So use cases. Now there are a lot of use cases that can come with S3, right? So you can create automated backup, like you can backup files from, let's say you want to log something, you can do that. You want to back up your data to S3, you can do that. Then you can sync data from various sources, like from Salesforce to S3, or from S3 to Salesforce, or maybe S3 to database, whatever. So these are some different use cases that you can have. Then you can also create some native apps, or maybe any mobile apps or anything as such, where you can host the images in S3 and then you can easily make them accessible to your applications. So that's something that you can do. I have seen a lot of people doing that, because S3 is comparatively a cheaper thing where you can put your files, like the images and stuff. A lot of startups are using this. I think, like they are using S3 as their bucket to host all these files. Okay. Before going to the demo, yep, sorry.
Few questions, uh, Tirth.
Hmm?
First question is from Ankush. Can you add client ID, client secret kind of access for pre-assigned URL?
Okay. So the client ID and client secret is something that you will be doing at the runtime. I mean, at the API manager level, right? So that's something out there. But out of the box, I don't think S3 gives you that. What you can do is that you can create that pre-signed URI or pre-assigned URL, whatever, and then you can put it in a database, and from that database you can serve it uh, like the usual Mule apps we do, right? So the Mule app can connect to that database, and then what it can do is that you can have your normal APIs that you do. You can assign the client ID and secret, and then give those URLs out there. Uh, does that make sense, Ankush? I mean,
One more question from Vijay. Is there a move operation for S3 in Mule? If not, how can we achieve it?
which one?
Uh,
Move operation. Okay.
yeah, this one.
Is there a move operation for S3 in Mule? So what exactly move are you talking? I didn't get, like moving objects or what exactly?
Uh, if you can elaborate your question more, then it will be better. Ashish, there is no size limits, I think, right?
No, no size limit. But one point though, when you are uploading anything, if the size is really big, then you need to use the part upload. So there is something called upload by parts. This is not just specific to Mule, but even if you use Java or Python or anything, so there is something called upload part. If you are, I think there is a limit out there, like in the normal upload, and it might take some time as well. So that is where you can upload stuff using the upload part. So you can create upload part, and then part by part you can upload files in stream. So that is something which can come handy when you are dealing with large files.
Okay, thanks for that, Keith. So Vijay is saying he was meaning move operation like moving a file or object between one bucket to another one.
Yes, I think move operation is there, but what you can also do is that like you can copy the object from one to another and then delete it. So you have the delete operation and you have the copy operation. So that can be done if it makes sense.
Awesome. From Ashley, one question. Can we transfer data encrypted between Mule S3 over the public internet?
Can we transfer data encrypted? I mean, data encrypted as in I didn't get. Like you want to encrypt the data in S3? Is that your point? If that is there, then yes, it is possible, and you can do that in Mule as well as in the console as such. So there is something called enable version. No, sorry, there's encryption enabled. So it uses KMS. I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but there is a service
Yes,
management service, and you can rotate keys. So it's really a good feature in AWS wherein you can create a key and you can rotate the key so that it always stays secured, and you can encrypt those data out there. So that can be done not by just Mule. You can also do it in what do you call it, like in the AWS configuration as well. From the Mule perspective, because this question came up, and currently I'll not be demoing that, but I just want to bring it where you can do that. So you have a create object out here, and there is a KMS master key out here. So you can encrypt object, and you can so basically what you need to do is you need to go to KMS, create a master, use that master key out here, and you can then encrypt the data and then push it to S3. So that's one feasible way of dealing with that.
thanks for that, Pete. That was a wonderful answer. Dipesh is asking one question. How to achieve multi-part upload in AWS because of size upload restriction?
Yep. So multi-part is something out here that you can use. So let's see. So you have to use a upload ID. Maybe you can create a UUID out here. Then you need to create a part number. So this is a bit tedious thing, like not the normal one where you can create an object readily and it will do the job. So it goes same for Mule as well as any other programming language per se. So if you are using multi-part, you need to part the files, chunk it, and then push those each parts to the upload part. Like that's something that you can do to upload really big files. Uh, Definitely useful. A lot of use cases might come handy with this, and yeah. So,
Thank you for that, Pete. Yeah, let's keep the momentum going. Let's go to the demonstration. I think no more questions.
okay, cool. So what I have done out here is, let's follow the design principle that MuleSoft tells us, right? You have a system API, you have a process API, you have a experience API. Let's say that you belong to a an organization where you want to create a system API out of the whole S3 ecosystem, and this system API can then be used by any other process API or experience API. So I've created a pretty decent RAML that you can say, like, just the basic services. You can add more services as per your requirement, but for this particular demo and the use case, I have mentioned only a few of them. I'll just go through them once. Before that, I just want to say the practice that I follow. So from the practice point of view, this is what I follow. I try to keep a separation of concern. So I put the examples in each of them in the examples folder. The resource or the the data type that I have, I create them out here, and then I import them using types, and then I use it. So this keeps my RAML short and sweet, and you can use that as the types out here and stuff like that. So that's just me, like, that's something I follow, not necessarily that you need to follow, but I just wanted to bring because I'm just sharing this screen. That's why.
This is a wonderful practice, Dev. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. This is wonderful.
Sure. Thanks. Okay. Now following the best practices. Let me talk about that. I'm not marketing my thing, but I'm just saying. So the way that I do it is, again, buckets and not bucket. So that is something that I follow, because you can always use uh, query params and URI params to use a single object. So that is what I do out here. So I have buckets and I have a post API out here. So post and get. So I can do a get on a lot of buckets, and I can do a post on a single one. So I can create a bucket in the buckets. I can get all the buckets in my AWS account. I can delete by a bucket name. I can get all the files in the buckets with the bucket name in it. I can create a file. I can then get a file in the bucket with a proper file name. I can delete it, and then finally the something that I always talk about, the p-signed URI, which is very important. So you can share that file, create a shareable link. So this is the RAML that I've created. Very basic, nothing fancy, but then this can give you some insight that you can uh, follow the best practices of REST API designing, as well as you can give the capability of AWS S3 integration with MuleSoft. Okay, so now coming to the RAML that I've created. So this is the description. I like to add description for each of these endpoints, so that it gives me insight, or rather any person who is using it in the exchange, that what exactly this particular endpoint does. So it creates a bucket in S3. That's it. Now what does it accept? It accepts the body, and it accepts a name. So the name of the bucket that you want to create in the AWS S3 is something that this endpoint basically does. Now responses, as I said, I like to keep separation of concern. So I don't add the example directly out here. What I do is I export it in the examples folder, and I can keep on adding more examples, and I can link it using the hash include. So that's something which can come might come handy in properly designing a RAML. Then I use get, so it gets list of the buckets in S3. Now see here, I have used the type out here. This is really useful because it says me that I will be giving an array of buckets out here. Now check this pretty cool thing out here, that it already creates an example for me. I don't add any example out here, which I'm doing here, but I just wanted to highlight that this is also another possibility. Without adding example, you can get the examples created by default by using the data types. Now where does these details come from? So it comes from the examples that I've added here. So I have added one example out here, that is Invoice-Meter, and I have just added one sample example of date out here, which is this. So it automatically creates the example data for me out of the box. So that is pretty decent. And just wanted to add another point, that if you use not just JSON but application XML as well, then it automatically creates the XML data as well for you, which is not the case if you use examples, because for examples you will have to create another example of XML, and then you need to include it. So I think this is pretty good in RAML perspective. Okay, the next one, right? So I have created a post, I have created a get. Now within the buckets, I am adding a URI parameter of bucket name. So this tells me that which particular bucket within that buckets I want to access. In this case, I can delete it. So I can delete the bucket by adding one parameter that I have added. I already talked about it, that you can force delete a bucket, right? So some buckets, if you already have something in it, maybe I can show that right quickly. So this NYC meetup has one file called test.json. Now, if I try to delete it, so it says that the bucket is not empty, right? So buckets must be empty before they can be deleted. To delete all objects, use the empty bucket configuration and then you can delete it. So basically what it is saying is that you need to empty the bucket and then you need to delete it. But with this particular piece, what you can do is that you can add one param, a particular check flag out there, and you can delete even a bucket which is having content in it. So I think it is pretty cool and might come handy in a lot of use cases. For this particular piece, I have added it as a query parameter. So you can pass that as a query parameter, which is a boolean that you want to force delete it or not. Okay. Again, description. I like to add description that what it does. It deletes the bucket. Now for the responses, a lot of people follow 200 and give out a success or whatever. For this particular piece, I have added a 204, which is like no content, but it is successfully done the job. So that's the convention that I have followed here. Now coming to files. So again, by the convention, buckets, bucket name, and then I want to get all the files in it. So that's the hierarchy. Now again, I have created one other file object. Again, bucket name, key, last modified. I'm just adding 3, but a lot of things comes from the connector that I'll show you. So again, example I have added here, in this case. So what it does again, as I said, it can create an example for me. So as you can see, it easily creates an example for me. So in this case, I am trying to get all the files within this bucket name. So that's the thing that I'm trying to do here. Next is post. So I can create an object in a given bucket. So for this bucket, I want to create an object. So I can create the object. Now in this particular example, what I have done is mostly since we talk REST, that's why I have added name, content. I'll talk about it. But then you can also upload files. I mean that's also possible. Anything and everything is possible to upload out here. Again, so it accepts a body. So what it accepts is a type object. So it's a file object. I accept a name and a content. So name is nothing but the name of the file that I want to give. Content is what is the content of the file that I want to give. And then I have given one example for this one. So let's see the example. So this is the example that I've given. I want to create a file test.json. The content being event invoicing your meetup and speaker me. So that's the file that I want to post. Okay. Now the response is 201 because I'm creating an object out there. So again, application JSON and example success.json. So success.json is nothing but success file created successfully. That's it. Okay. Now we have covered bucket, delete. Under files we have covered get, post. Okay. Now when you get the file, you get a key. Key is nothing but the name that you give. So in our case, it was test.json. So test.json, which is the file name, is nothing but the key. So now I want to get all the contents or get the content of that particular file. So what I am doing, the hierarchy again, buckets, bucket name, files, the key. So I provide the key to it and then I get the details. So get file in the bucket and example again file post.json because why I have kept this as file post.json. There is nothing because the same thing that I'm posting I want to get back. That's it. No, I mean I just got lazy out here. I can say I could have created a files a get success.json something like that to follow the best practices. But then fine. I mean we get the point that it gives us a response which I'm trying to show out as an example. Okay. Next is delete. So I want to delete what this particular key object. So then I'll be using this again. As I said, I'm using 204 no content, which says that it was successfully deleted. I can, however, also use 200 and then say the status success deleted stuff like that. Okay. The last one, the share. So I want to create a share link for this particular file with this key name. So I accept a query parameter out here, which is active time, and I take that in second because if you take it in second, you can convert it to any value, and then you can do it. So let's say that I want to keep it active for 60 seconds, 70 seconds, whatever. So you can add that value in the active time, and you can use that. to create the pre-signed URI, and then you can share it. So in this particular case, file share is nothing but status success, and then URL. It gives you a pre-signed URL that you can share. So this completes the RAML. Any question in terms of RAML?
A couple of questions actually. If you go to Ranadhir, little bit up. Yeah, so Ranadhir has a question. Ravi is asking another question. So let's talk about Ranadhir's ones. Can we do data copy from Salesforce to drop the CSV files using Amazon S3 connector by using organization's private IP address?
So, okay, let me understand. So you are saying you want to copy the data from Salesforce to drop the CSV file using S3 connector by using organization's private IP address. So, not sure, like, where you want to use the private IP. I mean, if you see the configuration, right? So in the configuration point of view, you need to create a S3 config. So let me share that. So you need to create a maybe service account where you will get an access key and access secret. You need to enter the region endpoint, like where your reside US is to whatever, and then you need to use that as your reference for all the operations. So in this case, let me again go back. So you want to push the files to S3, right? So you will be creating an object. So for creating the object, what you will do is nothing but you will be using that S3 configuration and it will do the job. Not sure where the private IP is coming, if I'm missing something on this.
Okay, no worries about that. Let me see if Ranadhir commented something. Not yet. Then Ravi's question we can take. Is there any limitation on number of files that we can fetch in a single call from S3 bucket?
Yes,
Or
so I
do you need
mentioned
some
that.
pagination kind of feature?
So it lazily loads on. So that is why what we can do, let me show, actually good questions are coming. Now, these are some things that you can do, that you can assign the last modified. So let's say I want to get all the data which was modified after this modified since date or unmodified since date. So these are the ways where you can get the uh, objects, basically, like you can list all the objects. Now in the list you can see there are a lot of options available. So you can use a prefix. I want to say that I want to get all the files which are kind of having a prefix of, let's say, meetup. So only those files will be you will be getting. Then marker. So let's say I put A, then all the files which are lexicography occurring after A or something like that will be coming. Then you have max keys. The maximum number of keys to return. That is where your pagination point of view will come into picture. But there are a lot of options available. I mean, this whole S3 connector itself has a lot of configurations, and each of them has a lot of configuration in itself. So these are the ways that you can fetch, file, basically list of files.
Thank you so much for that answer, Tirth. Ashley is asking one question. How do we define RAML for other kind of files? Say, for example, you want to upload PDFs or JPEG.
Okay, good question. So this one you need to use, form upload. Let me see. Let me bring up my Postman. Give me a minute.
Meanwhile, I'm checking if we missed any questions.
Yeah, sure, Neil.
Siva is answering to Ravi. That's perfect. Thank you so much for that, Siva. Ashok is helping Ashley. Thank you, Ashok. Anyone else? Any other questions? Others is asking, are you going to share this code, the Mule application and the RAML code?
Yeah, actually, I already have the blog created, and yeah, I'll be sharing all of them. No issues.
Thank you so much
So
for that, Keith.
People want, they can already go through it. Let me just paste the link while I'm, creating that or getting that postman up.
Yeah, sure, Tate.
Okay, let me know if my screen is visible.
Not yet. Yeah, now we can see your screen. Perfect.
So actually,
Postman.
you can use a form data upload. So you can, use the file, text or file, and then you can select the file and then do it. So that's one way. The other way is like, you can have files somewhere out there in your whatever space, like, local or maybe in your servers, then you can use the file connector easily and then you can do that as well. So these are the options that you have. Uh, RAML by default, let's see, where is it? So RAML by default, it gives you in the body application JSON, application XML, which comes in like, let's see if it gives you the intelligence. But then you can use form data. So as I was saying, application XML and application JSON are the two options that comes up usually. But then you can always use form data and then URL input and stuff like that to do that job. Okay, hope that answers.
Question from Vijay. For the list operation in S3, can we use a file name pattern like some asterisk or something?
Yeah, yes. So polling, yeah, polling. I have it part of the demo already, so I will be showing it. And so the pattern, right? It's very similar to what you do in your JMS or maybe VMQs connector. So whenever a new object occurs, you will be kind of doing something on that. Now, out of the box, it doesn't allow you to do this pattern thing, but then you can always use the same old techniques of watermark and stuff like that to get this thing done.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Tate.
Okay, I think we covered most of the questions, right?
Yeah, all the questions are done.
Okay, let me go to the demo then.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, so again, like, as I said, I created that RAML. So I already covered in depth what that RAML does. But just to show you, so this is one more feature that was added, I think, in 7.6. You now have an API design out here where you can see the design. I think this wasn't there earlier. I mean, I'm sure that it was not there in 7.5, but I'm not sure about the version when this thing was added. But I think this is pretty cool that you get this now, so you can see each of these things out of the box in Studio itself. So I use this RAML and I created this API kit router. Uh, Maybe people are already knowing it, but I just wanted to highlight one point out here in the listener configuration, that what it does is that it kind of uses a wildcard out here. So everything that is having API and then forward slash, so everything goes to this particular listener, and then it is routed using the API kit router. So the API kit router configuration then maps to this RAML, and it routes each of these requests to the appropriate point. I think this is pretty good in terms of how we are using these APIs, because it makes things a lot clearer and better. Okay. From the error or error handling point of view, these bad requests, no, not found, method not allowed, not acceptable, and all these things are already added. I like to add another one, which is any. So what it does is anything and everything that happens, I kind of catch that exception and I can throw it out. So let's say from the design perspective of the API-led connectivity. So if you're, I'm creating this as a system layer, right? So the process API might be calling this particular stuff. Now process API should know what exactly the error occurred. But at the experience layer, maybe that is where you don't want to expose a lot of these errors, like what exactly is the bucket number, or what exactly is the request ID, or stuff like that. So I mean, this is the way that I follow. That I always propagate back the errors from lower API regions to higher one, and then at the experience level, I try to keep it very limited and log most of them. Okay, console, again, it comes out of the box. So I mean, I was showing the same thing. It creates a pretty good UI out of the box, and okay. So now these operations. People follow a lot of standards. One is that they create each of these XML files for each of these operations and put it out there. And few follow the flow reference concept. Now, I mean, it's up to you what you want to follow. This particular one is not having a lot of endpoints, so I kept it here. But if it was having a lot of endpoints, maybe that which I need to cover, maybe I would have created separate mule configurations and added them out there just to keep it clear. For this demo, I have just kept it, pretty okay. I mean, I haven't done any configuration as such. Okay, now coming to all the endpoints that I've created. So let me show the demo first, and then I'll go to the code. So currently I have two endpoints. You can ignore this elastic beanstalk, that is something else. But then I have two buckets, NYC meter, and then I have this beanstalk. It's fine. Now let me create another bucket out here. So it says it got created. I got a success message. Let's check out there. Cool. Meetup. I wrote NYC meetup, but then it got appended with meetup. How did that happen? So it's something that I have done, just to show that you can do stuff like that. So when I'm creating the object, sorry, the bucket. So I'm just adding or appending meetup to it. So that is something you can do, or a lot of use cases can come in, wherein you can use database to do anything and everything, and then you can create a bucket. So maybe you can have some if-else logic or whatever. Like, so that's something that is doable. So just wanted to highlight that. Now I will get all the buckets. Now see out here, there are three buckets, but in the response you are seeing just one again, right? How did this happen? Again, the power of data view. So let's see. Buckets, list buckets. So I'm using the list buckets, and then I'm using a transform message out here. So what I'm doing, I'm doing some transformation of data view. So I'm filtering this such that with whatever starts with meetup, only that I want to show it. I don't want to show anything else. Then I don't want to show. I don't even want to show the owner display name and stuff like that. So I can remove it, right? So I have used a map operator for that. So and then I have fetched the name, added it in the name, creation date. I have changed even the creation date. You can see the format has changed out here. So I can add any format out here, and I can use that. So these are the power of data view that you can use with the S3. So these are the things that which gives us a lot of control. That's what I can say. I mean, data view is pretty good in terms of the functional programming perspective. So a lot of control can be given to this particular one, and you can use it. Mm, delete bucket. Okay, I'll come to delete at the end, maybe at the end of the demo. So I created a bucket. I'm fetching a bucket. Let me copy this. So files. Currently, there are no files in it. Let's see. So the previous one. Let's see. Yeah. So it was caching. That's what I was thinking. How did that happen? Anyway, so there are no files in it, and that's exactly what you see here. So I'm not getting any response out here in the files. Let's quickly create a file. So again, this is coming from that example. So I'm creating a test.json. The content of it is this particular object, NYC mule meetup and speaker. Let's send it. Okay, the files success file created successfully. Let's see it there. Cool. This is added out here. Now let's get the files again. So the bucket name is this. the key is nothing but the file name, right? And then when it was last modified. So let's see that again. So I'm passing the bucket name, I'm pushing it to a variable, and then I'm using this particular operation to do it. And again, as I think Ravi was mentioning how to do all those pagination stuff. So that is always doable. When you have more files, you can add max keys, delimiter markers, and all this stuff. But what I want to highlight again is the data wave part of it. So I'm not showing all the data. I don't want to show the display name or the owner of it, the size, the storage class, and something like that. I just want to show this particular details. So that is why what I've done, since it is an array of objects, I am mapping it and then I am using this. The benefit I think of using Mule out here is this particular thing. You get the intelligence out of the box. So you know what are the things that you can expect this particular operation to give us. So you have e tag, you have owner, you have size, all these things. But you can always select on the basis of use case what you want to do. One practice I do follow, which I want to show is that or share is that I try to give a lot of control in the system layer such that I try to give more data in the system layer so that in the process layer I can constrict it or filter it. So that's something we can always try. But then, yeah, this intelligence gives you a pretty decent look at what kind of data you can expect, and you can always use data with to kind of select what you want to show. Okay, now let's get. So I'm entering the bucket name, which is meetup invoicing meetup. The key is nothing but test.json, which I have created, and let me reverse send. Okay, so you can see this is coming like this. So I have a question actually. How do you think I can change this to a JSON? So any answers to that? Let's see. Neeraj, this is not a question from the trivia, but then I just want to know if people know of this already or not.
Yes, sir.
So,
No worries.
application JSON is already there. Let me show you. Get object. Okay, this is get object with key. This is application JSON already, right? So still it doesn't. Any ideas? Mind typing. Okay.
The HTTP response can be made as attachment. Ashish and Vijay are saying MIME types changes or setups.
Okay. I just want to do one thing which I tend to use.
Sumit is given data weave code.
Correct. Sumit is correct. So this is the one which you can use. You can use read, and then it will come as a JSON. Well, I already know that the data that I've added is JSON. So that's something that you can. So let's see. So this is my get object. I'll add another transform message here. Okay, let it start. Okay, while it is doing that, let me go to the other operations. Okay, so then I can delete it. So I can delete a file. So I need to mention the bucket name. I need to mention the file, and then I'll do a send. It will delete. I think it has started. Let's see. Let's initializing. Yep, it's up. Cool. So this is now coming as a proper JSON. The earlier one was a stringified version. So read is something which might come handy if people are not knowing it already. All right. Before deleting, let me create this shareable link that I was talking about. So as I mentioned here that how long I want to make this link shareable or accessible. So note that this particular one is a private, right? It's not a public per se. Let's see. So it has blocked all the public access. Everything is off, right? So this is the objects can be public in the sense it's something that is set for all the private files out there, possibly because in a in a private bucket you can make few files as public, so that is why it mentioned that objects can be public. But what I want to mention is that this particular bucket is not public, so it is a private bucket. Now I want to make objects available, right? So how I can do that? Again, that shareable link that I talked about. So let's see. From the demo perspective, let me keep it 10 seconds so that I can show that it's no longer accessible. So bucket name is this test.json query params, which is the active time of 10 seconds. Let me send it. Okay, I got back a URL. Let me open it. Okay, so the JSON got downloaded. Let me open it. All right, so I got back the response, which is nothing but the event, the speaker. All right, let me close it. Let me access this once again. So it's still accessible. 10 seconds. Okay. All right. So as you can see, now this is errored out. What it says that the expired time is this. So it got expired at this particular time. So it is no longer accessible. Now, if I have to, make it accessible once again, then I need to create another shared URL. And if I do it, so it gets downloaded. So I think this is pretty good in the sense that the file is private, the bucket is private, that I can make a accessible link. Now, as you can see, this is the extra value out here. So along with test.json, you can see a lot of other parameters that are added to make this a shareable link or pre-signed URL as we call it. Okay, now let me delete this particular file. No content. This should be deleted. Cool, it got deleted. I will get. I think it should. Let's see. Yep. So this is the error stack. I'm just printing it just for the demo. We definitely don't want to print all these things. So see the description out here. So the specific key does not exist. But in earlier case, we were able to fetch the details. Now that it is no longer present, you get a 404. It's no longer present. Okay. Now I have deleted it. Now I can delete the bucket. Okay, before deleting the bucket, let me create some more files. Just to show that another thing that I was talking about, right? The force select thing. Okay, I created this once again just for that demo. And if I try to delete it now, let me create the bucket once again. Meetup, meetup, NYC. Okay, so I created this. sorry. So I was already using this forces too. So that is why it was getting deleted. Let me do that once again. Sorry about this. Okay, I created it. Now let me try to. So if I try to delete it now, right? So it will throw an error. What does it say? The bucket you tried to delete is not empty. So that is exactly what happens when you try to delete this, not empty. Now if I add that particular thing, force true, then it should delete it. Alright, it got deleted. Let us check. Cool, it got deleted. Now coming to the code of this particular one. So as I said, I like to keep separation of concerns. So all the operations I have kept it in the operations XML. So whether it is get object, delete object, create object, list, delete, whatever. And I have kept a mnemonic name to each of these. So I understand that what exactly each of this subflow does for me. Get object, I think I have already covered it. I'm just getting the bucket name, the key, and then I'm using it, transforming it to JSON. And I also added one more point of the read, which I have added in this particular one, just to see the data in a proper fashion, this particular one. Next is deleting. This is where I am using the bucket name and key, that's it. So bucket name and key, and then this delete operation will delete the object. Creating the object. So I am getting the bucket name, I am getting the file name. The file name is nothing but this one. So this name. So I'm using this as the file name so that I have more control. In the process layer or in the experience layer, I can add the name as per my business requirement, and then I can use that directly out here. So that's it. One other point is the scanned ACL. Like you can make this read write. You can make this, public. These things come from the AWS perspective. Like these are the options which comes out of the box from there. So these are not something that Mule gives us. So Mule gives us a pretty decent drop down where you can see what are the options available. For this particular one, I kept private for the sake of showing it, the pre-signed URI where you created a publicly accessible URL for a private object. Other things are there are a lot of things out here. I don't think much of this will be useful to a lot of users who are using it. But then one thing though, you can use the storage class. I was talking about the storage class. Based on your requirement, you can use different storage class. Like you can push it to Glacier if something is not that ready, frequently accessible. It saves you some cost, and then all these other things. So these are something which will come from the AWS house, not something which comes from MuleSoft house. Okay, create object done. Listing object, I think listing object again, I already talked about the list file, same thing. Listing object again is on the same front. You can add prefix like, all the files which is having name starting with meetups, maybe you want to list out them and all these things. So delimiter max keys, again, if there are a lot of files, you can add max keys and kind of get them in chunks. Again, out here you get all this extra intelligence. You can use data to do further operations. Deleting the bucket. Now, deleting the bucket has this thing force, which I was talking about a lot of time. I have used an expression out here. So this force delete is nothing which comes in as a query parameters for me. So it tells me whether, since I've added it as a boolean out in XAML, so it directly gives me as a true or false. If nothing is coming, then I default it to false. So it doesn't allow me to delete the bucket if there are objects in it. But then if I pass through, then it will directly delete it. So this is the flag that I was talking about. Okay. Next is creating the bucket. Nothing fancy. Again, you can again can this also. You can make this public read write. Again, all these things coming from the AWS house. Again, you get a lot of stuffs out here which you might want to show based on your use cases. For this particular one, I have kept it decent, like nothing much status success, because if it will error out, then I'm handling it in the error propagate as a really. Again, listing buckets. I talked about this, so I'm adding some extra data weave. Now the create shareable link. This is something that I want to focus on. So I am getting the bucket name, I'm getting the object key. Now the set time active. So I have written some data with code out here. So what it does is that I'm using period basically. So I get current time, and then I use this period pt seconds. So this attribute dot query parameter active time comes in as a I'm injecting the value out here. I'm not sure if people are knowing this, but you can inject values using this particular thing, dollar and then this parenthesis. So you don't have to append using plus plus and stuff like that. So I like to use this one. It works pretty well. So pt dollar, this value will be changed to whatever value I pass. In my case, I was passing 10, so it changed to pt 10 and then period as period. So let me see if I can preview this. I think I need to add something. Right. So this attribute has an object value of 14. So I'm adding 14 seconds to my current time, and that gets changed to my local date time. So this is how I'm creating my active time object basically, or maybe a variable, and then I'm using it in this expiration interval. So it tells me that how long that pre-signed URI will be active. So this one is like the out of the box thing, create pre-signed URI, and then you can. So the encryption and stuff, I haven't really used it. I think it will be pretty similar to what we do, the AES 256 and KMS types things. So if you want to encrypt it and then you can send it, you can do that as well. But for this particular use case, even in my projects, what I've done is that we directly use this. We don't really encrypt it. I mean, you can get use cases where you can use this, but then you have the option. That's what I want to say.
Okay,
And
thank you so much for that, Hardeep.
yep. And finally, status success and URL is nothing but the payload. So the payload comes in as the pre-signed URI. So this completes my API point of the API part of the things. Now, the other thing that I have added is a poller. But before that, any questions on this front, then we can take it.
We have many questions. If you want to complete the demonstration, then we can take all the questions in the Q&A also.
Okay, cool. That should do. Okay.
Yes, and we'll close the presentation like in how much time more you need? Like 5-7 minutes?
Yep, I think that's the most.
Awesome. So once you're done with the demonstration, we'll take all the questions in Q&A.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the last thing that I've done for this particular demo is, this on new object. I think somebody was asking this as well in the questions, that, I want to, so let's say that I have a use case where every time a file gets created in AWS S3 bucket, I want to do something at my end. So in my case, I want to insert it to a MySQL DB. So I've created a Dockerized MySQL DB, and this is the event table that I've created. So it is the ID, event, and speaker. So I can populate this. So what I'm doing is, again, I'm using, so again, reusability. So I'm using a flow reference to something which was already there. So this AWS S3 operation already has get object. So this particular one. So I am using a flow reference to this from here as well as from my YAML point of view. So whenever a new file is created, what it gives me is, let's see what it gives me. Again, the integrations comes handy. So you get the bucket name and key name. This is the only thing that I am using in my case. Maybe you can use something else like last modified and stuff like that to do watermarking and all these things. But yeah, for this particular demo, I am just using key and bucket name because that is the least amount of thing that I need to fetch the details. So I am again using a read to convert the stringified payload into a proper JSON, and then finally I am inserting it to my database. So I am using MySQL 5.6 for this particular one. I have added the form, I have added the dependencies in form.xml, and then I am inserting it directly. So let's see how does that work. So the bucket name is nyc.ptup because that is what I have mentioned here in this bucket name. Now let me create this. So I can see this. Let's see. So it got added automatically, right? And let's add one more. Just to show. So again, test.json got updated with this value because I have kept the name as same. And let's see. Again, the flow got triggered. It should be out there. Again, the second entry got added, and it is currently in my DB. So this is how, very basic example of how you can integrate. A lot of features are there which I have not covered. Not possible to complete this exhaustive list. I mean, you can always use this reference and the docs to make all kind of integrations that you have. There is one other source that you have on delete object. Same as on new object, you have on delete object. So whenever you delete anything from bucket, again that flow will be triggered. So you can do something about it, like maybe you can delete it from the database or whatever, like based on your integration. So yep. So I think that covers my demo. So Neeraj, I think that's it from the demo perspective.
Thank you so much, Tejas. It was a wonderful demo. Let me just see if how many questions we have. So let's start from Vijay for list operate. Yeah, I think we already covered it. Ashley was asking, yes, about the PDFs. So after getting the data, in which format can we pass the payload to S3, octet, stream, or
Yep,
binary?
Octet. I think Octet is something that we can use. Octet stream will do the job.
Okay, and can we preserve the file extension?
Like preserve file extension where, like in the S3 or in
Yeah,
new?
while uploading the files to S3.
Yeah, so depends. Like I mean, in this particular one, I was adding that as a part of my name itself. So that will okay. I get your question now. So what you're saying is, let's say I'm uploading a .pdf file, and I can get this. So that will come out of the box from data view. I think there is something called this particular operator dot raw and then file name. So I think that comes from the data view house actually. So from the data view we can get all these details and we can use it.
Okay, so we have a question from Vijay. Which one is with respect to cost effectiveness, which is better, like Amazon S3 or SFTP file based operations?
Depends, right? I mean, SFTP, if you are using in AWS itself, then you get all these features like the high availability and all this thing. But I think still S3 is kind of the something that a lot of people are using now because it gives you 11 nines availability, right? That's really high. And plus there are options where you can use glaciers and stuff where it becomes more cost effective for you. But then it depends on the use case as well. If there are cases where you see that it's something from your integration front, SFTP is something which is making more sense, then you can of course go there. But personally, I feel S3 is something which is preferable because of the high availability, 11 nines, as I said.
Thank you for that. Sunita is asking one question. Can you show us how to configure S3 bucket connection?
Okay, sure.
Just the connector and the connection.
So this one you have. Oh, sorry, S3. So this is the S3 configuration. Session token is something, if you are using corporate, maybe you will be getting a session token for particular one. But in my case, since I own this AWS, I have the access key. Even corporates can give you access key, service accounts maybe, and then you can use that. So the access key and the secret key is something which you can use. I haven't really used this, AWS credential provider chain. If somebody has used it, you can comment on that. But for me, I think the access key and the secret key is something which you add and you are good to go because this is something which will connect you to your account. And this is not just for Mule, it is for any programming language, whether you use Python or Java or whatever. Region endpoint is something, I just want to highlight one point though. So if you go to S3, this is under global. It is not under any of this, AZs. But when you are creating, see the AWS region out here. So it does create your option within a region, but the AWS console is available in global. So that is something which a lot of people get confused, I guess. So that is why you have to add a region endpoint because that will show that where exactly your file will reside. Maybe if people are in India, they want to go to Mumbai location. Somebody who is on East Coast will go to East or West, whatever the case is. So that's it. What it covers.
Thank you for that. One question from Ashley. Is the time zone same as geolocation where the server resides in?
Yes, I think by default it is in US East. I mean Virginia. I think in the Cloud Hub you can select. At least in Cloud Hub you can select EU and ES are the two options that you have. So it will take that particular time. So local date time changes to the server date time at that point of time.
So Jata is asking one question. While storing sensitive data to and from cloud, are there any existing practices to securely transfer data?
Okay, I think Siva has mentioned one that you can use the crypto of DataWeave, which is really good. And other thing is already, like I mentioned, there is a KMS operation, which is again a higher level of security because in the KMS you can rotate your keys. Let me see. I think this created one. I'm not sure. But anyway, you can create a key out here, and you can use that key to encrypt your files and then use it. So that's another availability. But I also like the idea of Siva gave that you can use the crypto to kind of do that thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Siva, for that answer. Thank you, Pete. Ashley is asking another question. If the file is large, the get object method chunks the response or the full raw data at once?
I think it is using stream by default. So everything is stream in current Mule runtime, and even the response that we get back is in stream. So it will be a streaming response, and then once it is done, it will respond you back. So that's how it is. And there is also a part list part I get. I think I haven't tried that, but there's a list multi-part upload. I think that is for upload. No, I think as I mentioned, it will be streaming and it will give you the response. And of course, you have the other option, which is the shared URL. So that will make it more feasible in any of the use cases.
Thank you for that, Pete. Rishabh is asking if we don't have access key and secret keys, is it possible to make connections on the basis of role only? So yeah, Rajesh has already answered, not in Cloud Hub. That's correct.
Yes, correct.
We need access key and secret key for sure, even if we are using role-based authentication. regarding the Siva is mentioning something about time zone. Regarding time zone, we can dictate the time zone settings.
Yep,
Data
correct.
wave code also. Yeah, that also we
There is
can do.
another option. Just want to show how to do that. I think only the scheduler is something in Mule which doesn't, approve that. It by default uses UTC. Not sure if anybody has tried that, but I have faced that challenge. If somebody is having any idea on that, would be great.
By
This
default is UTC. You are right. Steve.
and this one, you can use this one, America, New York, or whatever your case is. Since I'm, you know, doing a demo for New York, I am using America, New York, and this also takes care of the DST that I want to highlight. If you use the time zone in terms of numbers, you might fall in the trap because if the daylight saving changes, then you will not be able to get that. So I preferably use this one because it takes care of the daylight saving as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions that we have? I think we are done with all the questions. Ashley just wanted to understand Siva's answer. Yeah, we will open up the mic in the end and then we can have interaction between Ashley and Siva. So let's move to the last part of the presentation.
Okay, quiz. Right.
Yeah, the quiz time. So before we start with the quiz, I just want to highlight a couple of things, or I just want to tell few rules.